usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Friday evening slash night, depending on where you're joining us from and what your time zone could be. Um, yeah. Apologies for skipping the morning broadcast, the usual Friday morning broadcast. That would have given us a preamble to the preview of the weekend. But like I'd warned some of you that were part of the previous broadcast on Thursday night, I had hinted upon it that maybe, just maybe, we may not find the appropriate time to do, our usual or our routine broadcast. So, um, yeah, I got caught away with work, and basically, by the time I got done, it was 1 p.m. It didn't make sense for me to do the live, uh, and things like that, but anyway, it's good to be back, and we'll be looking at the Premier League preview, among other things. Teams laden with injuries very early on into the season, and yet injuries are already a concern for teams like Manchester City. Arsenal have their own things to worry about. Mikel Arteta has explained why Gabriel Jesus was left out of their UEFA Champions League squad, and things like that. So, like I said, things are happening thick and fast, but it is what it is. It is the nature of football. Anyways, allow me have our audios tested and make sure everything does check out before we go any further or any deeper into tonight's conversation that will cover predominantly what's to come as far as the Premier League is concerned at this weekend, and of course from other major leagues across Europe, including that game between Valencia and Barcelona. So yeah, there's plenty to look out for. Like I said, teams are laden already with injuries. Man City being a culprit, while others contend with their own. Manchester United with Matthias Cunha, that's an issue for them to sort of take care of, and things like that. So either way, like I keep saying, injuries are part of the game, and they, as much as we hate them, they do happen. They do happen in the game of football. They are part and parcel of the everyday game, and it's just basically it is what it is. There's not much we can do about them. Maybe the team physios, team doctors, there's something they can do to sort of better the fortunes or the odds of how long players spend out on injuries and things like that. But you never know. It's a 50-50 chance. Anyways, I will kick things off with the run-up of fixtures that will be coming your way in as far as the Premier League is concerned. But the early kickoff does come between Arsenal and Nottingham Forest at the Emirates Stadium at 2:30 p.m. East African time, while at 5 p.m. There's as many as 5 games, including Bournemouth up against Brighton, while Crystal Palace will take on Sunderland. Everton and Aston Villa will be meeting, while Fulham will entertain Leeds. So that's all to come. And Newcastle will be up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, while at 7:30 p.m. West Ham will welcome Tottenham Hotspur, and later on at 10 p.m. Chelsea will travel to the GTEC Stadium to take on Brentford. And on Super Sunday, Burnley will welcome Liverpool. So far, one of those teams that are unbeaten, as 9 points out of 3 opening fixtures, while Manchester City will welcome Manchester United. So the question is, where do we begin it all from? Let's kick things off with the biggest game of the weekend. That's the Manchester Derby between Manchester City and Manchester United. Like I said, it's a game that does come a little too early for some of Manchester City's injury concerns, including, according to multiple sources, some could, perhaps pass late fitness tests before they could make it for the weekend fixture on Super Sunday. But players like Ryan Cherki, Ryan Atnori, Omar Mamush, Josh Kovadiol, Akoshanov, Rico Lewis, John Stones, Phil Foden, Mateo Kovacic, Savinho, Calvin Phillips, Nico O'Reilly. I mean, these are some of the players that are feared could be absent for Manchester City ahead of that game with Manchester United. So it's a whole long list of injuries for Pep Guardiola to contend with. But like I said, should any of them pass their lead fitness test, then possibly they could make the squad. But it's not been a good start, or it's not been as fortunate for Pep Guardiola as to start this season, because we are talking about a team that has already lost 2 of their opening 3 fixtures of the Premier League. The very last being that loss to Brighton and Hove Albion by 2-1, while earlier on they had lost to Tottenham Hotspur by 2-0, which preceded their 4-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the opening day of the weekend. So that's the kind of team we are looking at. Then it then begs the question that with those injuries, who then do Manchester City get to start? Well, I think the selection headache will start in goal, because that's where they've signed 3 new goalkeepers, including Marcus Bettinelli from Chelsea as the third choice goalkeeper, James Trafford from Burnley, as well as Gianluigi Donnarumma from PSG. So what we await is to see how things will transpire, or what kind of selection will be made for the side that is Man City. The expectation is that it could be Gianluigi Donnarumma that gets to start, although I won't be surprised if Pep Guardiola decides to stick with James Trafford. But anyways, before we proceed to that, Sevilla are a goal down, a 2-1 down against Elche. That's in the Spanish La Liga, while in the German Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen have beaten up against Eintracht Frankfurt by 3-1, while Marseille in the French League One are leading Lorient by 3-0. So that's some of the action that is ongoing, in as far as elsewhere in Europe is concerned, when it comes to the top flight leagues. Anyways, so there's going to be a bit of a selection headache for Pep Guardiola when it comes to their goalkeeping position. But I think the rest of, should be not easy peasy, but should be more easier to decide. For example, there's an expectation that we could see Ruben Diaz alongside who? Oh, the name is slipping out of Nathan Ake. We could see that Matthias Nunes at right back. I mean, that's like one of the expectations, and there's nothing to hide about that. So really, it's not a good place to be if you're Manchester City, having to cope with all those injuries very, very early into the season. The last thing you want to have is that disruption, because also next week is UEFA Champions League football. So UEFA Champions League football means that Manchester City may have more to contend with in the very, very near future, in as far as, because games are going to come thick and fast. That's the expectation. And with that, there's no changing the calendar just because you have so many injuries. It just doesn't happen that way, so you have to stick it out. You have to stick it out and play the team that you have to your disposal. So yeah, there's going to be that expectation in for Manchester City. But we are talking about a team that has a very, very broad squad. So choosing a lineup while they have so many injuries, it's still one that is still one where you think they are able to field players. Rodrigo Cascante in that midfield, Nico Gonzalez, Oscar Bob, all those players, can play in that team, regardless of what you may think of them individually. So of course they lost some, the likes of Ilkay Gundogan. They no longer have that luxury, but yeah. excuse me, with both Erling Haaland available to the team, you're always going to have a chance because when you have a striker of his stature, that gives you the confidence going into the game, even when you have so many injuries that you're trying to contend with. So, for me, while the injuries do not improve on your confidence, given Manchester City's experience, yeah, it should be something that they can live with through the derby. Unfortunately, they'll be up against a team that is managed to beat them, or that managed to beat them last season at Etihad, but 2-1 before a goalless draw that did take place at Old Trafford. So then Manchester United also have recorded 2 victories over Manchester City in the last 5 encounters, one being a draw, while they've lost the other two by 3 goals to 1 and by 3 goals to 0. One of that game being at the Etihad Stadium, while the other was at Old Trafford. So both these sides are no strangers to beating one another uh, at the others, at home turf. And then also, excuse me, and then also you you we are talking about a game that sort of trumps form, a game that trumps, transfer spend, squad depth, squad quality. This is the game that trumps all of that, and it boils down to who wants it the most on any given day, who gives it the most credit, and usually that's how it boils down. But 50 games, 56 games played between them, and there's been only 10 draws. So that's why you see chances of a draw are very, very limited. And now I know in my earlier submission, for those of you that have watched our preview, or if you haven't, go to the channel under the video section and check out that video. We did talk about my prediction had been a 2-all draw, but I'm inclined to think somebody is going to win this. But I'll stick to a 2-all draw for now. For now, I'll stick to a 2-all draw for now. But that notwithstanding, there have been 20 victories for Manchester City and 26 for Manchester United. So you can see that the old Devils are still dominating this fixture by a fair gap, although Manchester City have done really, really well to close the gap in recent, at times. On the other side, we're talking about a Manchester United side that while they've not, all results have not gone their way, they must be proud of themselves having gathered 4 points out of the possible 9 with a 1-all draw against Fulham and a 3-2 victory over Burnley. Now, against Burnley, they'll look to that result knowing that there's plenty to correct, especially defensively, while the other game had been a 1-0 loss to Arsenal on the opening weekend. So that's the kind of team we are talking about. Yes, the game may come a little too quick for Matthias Cunha, but we know that they have Mason Mount, Brani Bomo, Bruno Fernandes. It all depends on how Ruben Amorim chooses to assemble his team. We know it's going to be a back three. He equally has some bit of selection headache when it comes to the goalkeeping situation. Do you retain Altay Baindia, or do you go with the new Sene Lomans, the goalkeeper that was recently signed from Royal Antwerp? So it's a big question that Ruben Amorim will have to answer. Unfortunately, the game at which it comes is one that has oftentimes has little room or margin of error. So you will have to tread cautiously, or otherwise, it may not be that great for him. It may not be that great for him. So, anyways, for me, I can't say it's a balanced out fixture, but like I said, it's a fixture that sort of trumps form, that trumps, the caliber of managers that are on the other side of the dugout. There's a way Manchester United in recent couple of times, including last season when they were at their worst or very bottom, they still found a way to post points against the big teams. We saw that 1-all draw against Arsenal, Old Trafford. So we saw a 2-all draw against Liverpool. We saw a goalless draw against Manchester City, and then also a 2-1 victory against Manchester City. So they're that kind of team, and that's why I'm expecting that they will pick a result out of this fixture. Unfortunately for them, it will be a draw. In terms of that, I set up for the side of Manchester United. I'll go with Altai India. I'll go with Nosa Mazorowi. I'll go with Matas Delit and Lenny Euro in that setup, and then, of course, Patrick Togu for me on one side and Diego Dalot on the other. Then a double pivot, I'll go with Manel, with Casemiro and Kobe Mainu. I'd go with then Bruno Fernandes, Brian Mbomo, and Benjamin Sheshko in that kind of setup. Whether it will be the case remains to be seen, but that will be my probable lineup. On the side of Manchester City, I'd go with James Trafford in goal. I'd go with Ruben Diaz. I'd go with what's his name? Nathan Ake. I'll go with Rico Ruiz. And maybe Matthias Nunes. Then Rodrigo Cascante, Tijan Riendas, Bernardo Silva, Brod Erling Haaland, Jeremy Doku, and Phil Foden. I hope that completes the setup, because the line is a back four, so you have a bit of a double pivot in Rodrigo Cascante and Tijan Riendas and Bernardo Silva ahead of them. Then Jeremy Doku, Phil Foden, or Phil Foden is injured. I'd go with Oscar Bob and Brod Erling Haaland. So not the strongest of lineups, but it's one that cannot be underestimated in regards to their prowesses. Like I said, when you have Bernardo Silva, Brod Erling Haaland on your turf, Ruben Diaz, then you do give yourself a chance, because you have the leadership quality in all departments. And we know Brod Erling Haaland loves, if there's anything he loves, will be banging it against big opponents, which he's come under criticism as not having or not scoring as often as he does against smaller teams. Anyways, that's it on the side of the Manchester derby. Quickly, Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest. Today we did learn from Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta that William Saliba had returned to training, but then they will make their own assessment and judgment prior to kickoff on whether to include him in the squad or leave him out, or even in the starting level. My gut feeling says that Arsenal do not, start with that kind of, they want to send a strong message, but also on the other side, we do have a new face in the dugout on the side of Nottingham Forest. That's Ange Postecoglou, who may have, by the time of tomorrow's game, may have had maybe about 2 to 4 kind of training sessions, depending on how he structures his training sessions. For some managers, it's morning and evening. So for others, it's an extended bit of a training episode in the morning hours. So depending on how your manager goes about things, we're going to have, he does inherit a team that was accustomed to playing with a low block and trying to catch teams with the counter, while for him, he loves that expansive football, which has caused him problems at Tottenham Hotspur. And I'm looking to see whether in the long run, he will readjust those plans to say, this is how I want to play. But because my system is often inefficient defensively, then I need to do better in that regard. Then on the other side is a manager in his 5.5-year contract. So within the club, that's Mikel Arteta, despite for a result, seeking to bounce back from that 1-0 defeat against Liverpool. We know that that in itself causes a bit of pressure, because you do not want to be losing 2 games in the opening 4 matches of the week or of the new season. So as much as you can still bounce back, you ought to value the kind of a team that you do have. So of course, the game, he also did speak about Bukayo Saka, saying that he's really pushing to return as quickly as possible. I mentioned about Kai Havertz, and he said Kai Havertz has started walking by himself, started applying a bit of pressure on that knee, but it may be a couple of weeks, if not a month, still out for Kai Havertz. Then still sticking to the point of injuries, like Ben White and Christian Nogard, those have returned to full training. While William Saliba, like I said, in an interesting turn of events, is one of those that have returned to, to training. Then you sort of look at that. And then he also got to speak about Gabriel Jesus, who was omitted from Arsenal's squad for the UEFA Champions League. And he did say that doctors I told them that Gabriel Jesus is expected to return to action anywhere between December and January. So they chose to omit him from the UEFA Champions League squad because a lot of you, I inclusive, were wondering why Arsenal had chosen to leave out a player of his stature and with a very good record in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. But I guess that matter has been settled. Nonetheless, I do think that Arsenal will continue with David Raya as he is set to make his 100th Premier League appearance. I think for the Gunners, is it for Arsenal alone or across board? 100 appearances in which he's kept 41 clean sheets. Again, Mikel Arteta did not hesitate to hint it to the journalists that he got abused or sort of verbally maimed for making the decision to bring in David Raya and sending around literally to the dogs, for lack of a better word, and things like that. Really. So David Raya in goal, Julian Timber. I'm going to go with Christian Mosquera, Gabriel Magalhaes, and then Ricardo Carafiori. Midfield, Declan Rice, Zubimendi, Odegaard. Eze, Madueke, Victor Gyökeres. That will be my starting 11. As simple as that. On the side of Nottingham Forest, Arsenal will have to remain concerned or aware of the danger that Elliot Anderson can cause, given he's not a very, very talkative character. But anyways, Elliot Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, Calum Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood, Taiwo Awoni. I mean, that's a team that sort of gives people headache when they do face it. But my prediction remains a 3-1 victory for Arsenal, regardless of whether Ange Postecoglou does an overhaul of the tactics or he looks to gradually ease himself into the happy hearts of those Nottingham Forest fans. So I think you have to go it a bit gradually, then you review game by game and then take it from there, start correcting things and take it from there. But we will have to wait and see. Anyways, like I said, my prediction is a 3-1 victory. All the other fixtures, Chelsea, Burnley, my expectation is for Chelsea to win, as it is my expectation for West Ham United to lose to Tottenham Hotspurs, Liverpool to continue on their winning streak, by beating Burnley. I went for a 4-1 victory, 3-1 victory for Liverpool in that regard. But for those of you, if you are in any breadth whatsoever, are interested in my videos or predictions for those particular games, please head over to the channel under the video section and watch that Premier League preview for Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, Manchester United, Man City, among other things. Otherwise, allow me to wish you a blessed night. It's been a bit of a long day for me, so allow me to sign out this one after only 23 minutes, because that's what I could accord you. I do not want to, stay here longer and not deliver you the very best. Stay blessed. Have a wonderful night. We'll catch up tomorrow if the time allows it. Bye-bye for now.